Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear Review. And today we're looking at the Helm Miyako dive watch. This is an ISO certified dive watch. Tons of great features. One feature on here is absolutely frustrating. I don't get it at all. I'm sure it's out there in other YouTube reviews. I've only seen a couple of them. But when I was noticed that my name on the waiting list was up to buy one of these watches, I went in there, put my code in, and guess what? There were two watches available for me. The gray version and the blue version. So I need your help in deciding which one that I should hang on to and the other one I should let go. And yeah, that's going to go to my store, the realidealgear.com store. If you're interested in these watches that I do review, that I put up for sale, that's where you're going to find them. And I think a reasonable price, a good price, and some of them a really darn good price. So check that out at realidealgear.com. So let's go through the 5 things we typically go through, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, and then legibility and lume. So the size of this watch, 40 millimeter case, 13 3/4 millimeters tall. This watch is it is chunky. This is a chunky watch. And then of course the between the lugs, it is 22 millimeters, which is great. Fits a lot of different straps. I've already swapped out the strap on here. I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. But I love the dimensions of this watch. It's a little bit chunky, but sometimes that chunky watch is kind of what you're looking for, right? You're looking for a watch that has that presence on your wrist. This is definitely going to be one of those. Now, what I don't like about this is when I purchased the watch, open up the box, put it on, it already had a NATO strap hooked up to this. And so when I put the watch on, it was a double pass NATO strap. It sat way too high off the wrist. Not only is it 13.75 tall to begin with, you put a double pass NATO strap underneath the watch and it raises it up even more. So you're looking at something that's well over 15 millimeters overall, and I just don't think that doesn't sit well with me, especially with a watch that has as much polish on here as it does. This is kind of not really a tool work watch, so for me, I'm a little more protective of it. So NATO strap is out of here. Now the metal bracelet is fine. Metal bracelets are kind of a dime a dozen. They all generally look about the same. So I went right to putting a leather strap on here, which is what you see here. So this is the strap that I have in-house at my place. Put it on, and I love it. I actually love the look of this over the NATO strap and the metal bracelet. Now, so the blue version of this is the exact same everything. The bezel, everything is dimensionally the same, just a deep blue bezel color and a deep blue dial color. So I have pictures and photos of that one that you're going to see up here, so you get to see them both together, and really, they're really not that far apart when it comes down to the tone of the color, all right? So overall fitment, it's great because it's a strap. I've got the holes on here, and these strap holes work perfectly, and it's a very flexible leather strap. I love it. It might be a little bit top heavy on here, but at the same time, you cinch down the strap a little bit more, make it a little bit more snug on the wrist, and you'll be just totally fine. Plus, over time, that leather strap, if it's too snug, it's going to loosen up just a little bit for you, and it's going to feel just perfect, okay? Because the leather is going to give a little bit under stress, more stressful wearing conditions. So the overall fitment of this watch is great. With this strap, it's a little top heavy. The crown is really easy to grab. It's grippy. The bezel, I like the size of the bezel as well. The bezel is, I would say the grippiness of it, it's not quite as grippy as I like, but at the same time, it's not smooth. I think comparatively, the Invicta Pro Diver is a watch where it's really hard to get a hold of the bezel because the texture that was on there it's just too smooth. It's textured, but not really. This is kind of getting close to that. I definitely have texture. I can grab this, and the bezel action on here, it's pretty aggressive. And again, that'll loosen up over time. Now, why is it so aggressive? This is an ISO certified dive watch, which means that this watch has gone through all the testing. The models have gone all through the pre-testing of certain components of the ISO rating. But this watch is ready to go, ISO certified. So if you're doing any kind of legitimate scuba diving out there at depth, this is going to be a watch that will be qualified for you to wear as a backup watch. So for that reason, there's a few other things that are going to pop up. The ISO certification adds a little bit more heft to what we're talking about here. I don't think it has anything to do with the height, though. It's a 200-meter water-resistant case. There's plenty of 200-meter water-resistant cases out there that are not this tall, okay? So overall fitment, I like it. Now, the finish is awesome. High polish brushing on the side of the case on both sides. You have a little bit of that high polish even on the bezel, the coin edge of the bezel as well. So I think that is something also to keep in mind, that this watch really lends itself to more than just, I wouldn't say it's a work watch, but kind of that around the house, casual, almost semi-formal. I think this is definitely a semi-formal watch. We'll get to that at the end. But this polish that's on here lends itself to that. The interesting thing about this, though, is that it's brushed steel on the lug itself, on the top of the lug. So when you look at the top of the lug, it's brushed on top, polished on the side. Kind of the reverse of what you normally would think of with a dive watch. Usually it's brushed on the side and polished on the top, but it's the reverse on this watch. Now the finish of the dial and the bezel, this is where things really get fun, because the dial is just so full of texture and 3D and character and everything. Now this is the gray dial version. You'll see some of the blue dial version up here as well. But you'll notice that you have the radial brushing around the hour markers on the outside portion of the dial. But then in the center you have this wave pattern. And the wave pattern is really, I think, pretty cool looking. And this gives this contrast of different sections within the dial. I love the size of the numbers that are on here. You have the 12, 3, 6, and 9, which is awesome. And then the hour markers in between, great. Very easy to read. The handset's very easy to read. It's got that kind of Fotina color on the handset and on the hours, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it kind of goes with everything here, which is also why I think this waxed leather strap kind of goes along with it as well. Now here comes the most irritating part of this, and this is the part that is absolutely frustrating. But between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock is the date window, and that is a date wheel, and that is supposed to tell you the date, but putting my glasses on, I have a hard time seeing what the date is, and it just looks like a hole in the dial. So to me, this is a waste of a complication on this watch because it's so hard to read the date. Not to mention the fact that everything is so small on here. It just doesn't fit. Shouldn't have been a date window on here. Take it off. Don't do that again. Or make it big enough to be actually useful. But at the same time, it's an ISO certified dive watch. You don't really need to know the date of things when you're underwater for X amount of time. And so I get it, but I just think it's a waste. Love the crown. The crown and the has this kind of widening diameter from the side of the case out to the very edge of the crown. So the widest part of the crown is out on the edge where you actually grab it with your fingers. So to me, that's the best setup. Rather than just kind of your straight cylindrical type crown, this actually widens up as it goes towards, goes away from the crown. So love that piece as well. Finishing this watch is outstanding. I love the red tip on the second hand, the design, the minute track around the hour markers is at an angle, so it kind of gives this sloping effect down to the dial. And then you have that intersection in the very center, the bullseye section, you have all that wave pattern. So a lot of character with this design. Sapphire crystal, sapphire bezel insert. It's all loomed. The bezel, all the numbers and markers on the bezel are loomed as well. Outstanding pattern design and screw down case back. Now, let's talk about the legibility and loom. Legibility is really, really good. It would be better if it was white. Instead, it has Fotina markers and handset on here. If it had white, it'd be even more legible. But I have no problem reading the time on this watch whatsoever. I think it does a great job of showing you the time. The handset is pretty easy. I wish the hour hand was a little bit different from the minute hand. They're just a little too similar in my book. If you have the hour hand a little bit different from the minute hand, I think actually underwater that's going to be helpful. Now, you're more interested in the minute hand anyway, and also the bezel, but at the same time, I just think the hour hand could be a little bit more different. Legibility-wise, great. Loom-wise, excellent. Is it awesome loom? Close to awesome. It's Fotina, so it tones itself down pretty quick because it's already a color that's toned down to start with. So you don't get the same duration with Fotina loom or the old radium loom than you would with the really bright white kind of applied loom. So yeah, it's very good loom. It follows the ISO certification, which it has to last after 3 hours. It has to be legible, which it is. Great overall application of everything on here when it comes down to loom. So let's talk about the ISO certification. What is involved in ISO certification? Well, this is ISO certified 6425. That's the code. Here are the things included. You have a unidirectional bezel. You have a countdown timer on the bezel. It should have 5-minute markings on there. A loomed second hand with some kind of a pip on the second hand that goes around so you can see where the second hand is to show you that the watch is working. Then you also have an hour hand and minute hand that are distinguishable from each other. I think they could have done a little better job on that. And the time is visible after 180 minutes of darkness. So after 180 minutes or 3 hours of darkness, can you still read the time? And on this watch, absolutely. So when it comes to all-night lume, you're going to get all-night lume out of this watch anyway. They do a water overpressure test, so it goes beyond the rated pressure on here, which is 200 meters. They do a condensation test where they heat up the watch to a certain temperature, and then they put a drop of cold water on the crystal and see if there's any condensation on the inside of the crystal as a result of that crystal being cooled down quickly. There needs to be a certain resistance to magnetic fields. It needs to be accurate plus or minus 30 seconds a day. There is a 1 meter shock resistance to a wooden floor. It has to pass that and also remain workable. There's a saltwater test where it's immersed in salt water for 100 hours straight to make sure there's no negative effect on the movement on the inside after that. They also check that as well. There's a hot and cold shock treatment. So they put it in a hot environment and then they cool it down super fast, make sure that the movement still works. And then the strap needs to hold at least 200 newtons of force at the spring bar, which kind of goes back to my next thing about whatever you put on this. If you don't like the NATO strap like I didn't, and you want to put a strap on here, you have to be aware that the spring bar that they provide is a spring bar rated to hold on to 200 newtons of pressure. So it's a heavy duty spring bar. You can put a lighter duty spring bar on there if you want to get a little bit more clearance, but just keep in mind that the ones that are provided are based on that ISO certification requirement, okay? Where do I see myself wearing this watch? Well, I've been wearing this watch around the house. This is not a work watch. I'm not wearing this out on the equipment that I have, mowing and doing things like that. This is definitely around the house. Not any like house duty kind of things, but definitely out to eat, office type stuff. This to me is definitely a semi-formal watch. If you put a black leather strap on here, that just makes this watch all the more formal. This waxed leather look, probably a little bit more casual than most watches out there when it comes down to like where would you wear it. But you put black leather on here, it just highlights everything in black. You get that nice shine to it, and it's almost formal ready. I think the black dial, you'd probably pull off the formal wear as well with the black leather strap on here. Go black NATO. Maybe the buckles kind of plays with the formal aspect of things, but semi-formal for sure. This is a great watch for a lot of different occasions, probably not so much for the work side of things. Sapphire crystal, sapphire bezel insert, you're not going to scratch the top of the case. I just worry about the high polished sides, and that to me is where I kind of draw the line when it comes down to the work that I put this watch through. Great watch, love it. I love the movement. High beat Miyota. What is this? A high beat Miyota 9015, 42-hour power reserve. Great, smooth, sweeping hand. I love it. I think it's just a great value watch overall. So what's the overall score for this watch? It is a 9.6 out of 10. And the biggest hit is that dumb date window. I'm gonna tone it down here. I don't like it. Okay, 9.6 out of 10. I really don't like it. All right, so there you go. There's the rating for this watch. If you're interested in this watch or any other watches, some of them may or may not be on my website for sale at realidealgear.com. Check that out for any of the watches that I've reviewed. I have a limited edition Zelos in there, so it's right in the ballpark on the lower end of the price range for the limited edition Zelos Aurora Titanium Field Watch. Just not my cup of tea when it comes down to it, but it's on there. Take a look at it. You're not going to see much of those anywhere else, and it's up for sale. So check out the website, realidealgear.com. My name is Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review. We'll catch you guys next time.